Never, ever, 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 ever do that again. Welcome to this week's episode of 20 Minute Tims. I am Jamie. I'm joined by Stephen.
A relieved Stephen, yes you are. You're joined by me.
And Melly with who was just guzzling down a whole packet of Strepsils just before we hit record there.
Recovery Strepsils, good to see
it.
Yes. Good to see it.
The old throat copped it yesterday, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
Melly, you were the only one at the game. You sat through the full 120 minutes. You're the one that managed to cop a ticket. I watched it at home, but I think I've got to say I don't think I would have been any less nervous being in your seat.
No, it was very like the pre-COVID one where Julian gets the winner. That we were sort of under the cosh that day, but this
what,
one
you mean
was
Celtic cheated? Is that what you mean? Is that why it's like that? Aye, disgraceful.
It was back and forth. It was hard going. My Whoop band was very upset with me after it, but Celtic got there. Well, Celtic do what they always do in the end, and they were standing on the podium, and that's what counts. We can go into all the different details of it, but the fine margins, whatever you want, but the detail that matters the most is who's got the trophy at the end of it, and one of us is successful, one of us isn't.
Absolutely nerve-shredding, wasn't it? What a classic for the neutral and all that bollocks, but a difficult one to take on the day. But ultimately, it's the biggest cliche going, but it's a cup final and literally the only thing that will ever matter when you look back in the history books. And there's been a lot of that this week, right? There's been a lot of counting going on in the history books last week, but the only thing that will ever matter is that, yes, it was very, very, very tense, and yes, it went to as I say, nerve-shredding penalty shootout. And I actually looked back at that. There was a kind of a wee list of those doing the rounds. Someone put it in our Discord group, which is the community attached to our Patreon. And it was, I think in my lifetime, Celtic have only been in 10 penalty shootouts, and I've only won about 3 of them, I think. So, and it's 3 in a row, so we're in a hot streak of penalty shootouts. However, as I agree with Jamie, never ever again, thank you very much. But yeah, it was an extremely tense day, but the only thing that's ever going to matter is that Celtic won yet again, yet another trophy, and we'll come on to all that coverage of it and all that. But overall feeling, massive relief. I thought that it could have gone anyway. A good lesson for Celtic, I think, going forward. I think there's a lot of, not so much positives about the game, but I think managers are nothing if not problem solvers. And I think that Brendan Rodgers has a lot to take away from that game and stuff to work on. But the overall positive is Celtic got the job done yet again. Unbelievable.
Look, I have sat through many, many games like that as a Celtic fan in my life, and you two will be the same, and every Celtic fan will be the same, where the result was the reverse. Not so long ago, I felt that was the story of Celtic in cup finals, Celtic in Glasgow derbies, Celtic back in Old Firms, or whenever it was called an Old Firm. We would throw everything at it, and somehow they rats would still win. They would scurry away with the trophy, but now we're the rats.
Yes.
Now we're the rats.
With an H, of course, the rats.
Yeah. Now we're the ones who, like, no matter what I was watching the game and I thought, we are terrible. This is the worst I've seen us play in a cup final for these. They're all over us. We're making mistakes left, right and centre. We're scoring with 2 minutes to go and you think that's it. Then 18 seconds later, the ball's in the back of the net and it goes to penalties and you're like, oh. And I thought, but I just thought there's no way. Surely there's no way. But there seemed to be, as soon as it was all said and done and it was decided, there was a strange inevitability about it. You were like, of course. If it was going to come down to the slimmest of margins, if it was going to come down to a coin toss at the end of the day, if it was going to come down to a fluke or a universal mystery, if it was going to come down to one slice of fate either way, it was always kind of going to be Celtic that got it. And I heard them, I think even Liam Scales, or it might be Callum McGregor, was saying, even after the game, after full time and it was going into half time, their game plan was Rangers played later on or closer to the tie than us, so extra time would really benefit us. And he went, and even it didn't work out like that. It still went to penalties. So I'm so pleased that we managed to win it, and I don't have an awful lot of sympathy for Rangers. I never do. But what I will say is this, right? I've long thought, like, see when we were the shoe was in the other foot, so to speak, all those years ago. Excuse me. And we were rubbish, and we were the underdogs, and we weren't winning much. out of that, we've still got players that we admire, and we've still got heroes, and we've still got guys to this day that we still respect for trying their heart out, right? That Rangers team have no won a thing against us almost at least a decade, right? They come this close. They come this close to winning something for the first time in God knows how long. Those players, it was a fluke. It was as I said, a coin toss. And there's 8 people in the stand applauding them off. They do not care. It is the most toxic, miserable fan base I've ever encountered in my life. They accept nothing but, we will accept nothing but winning. But that hasn't worked for a decade. So what you've created is a thankless task. Playing for Rangers now is a thankless task. It was hilarious when they're collecting their runners-up medals, their second place, their losers medals, and the camera pans to the stand. There's 6 guys and 2 dogs going, boo!
I loved Phil making a big deal of it as well. He made a point of actually acknowledging that, we came so close, and it's a testament to the fans or a testament to the players that the fans stuck around to applaud them, even though they didn't get matched. I was like, is what Jamie's just described. Like, if there's 6 guys and a dog standing there booing, it counts. Fans are still there. Fans are still there paying their respects to the team for their efforts. I thought that was an incredible thing to say, of many that Philippe Clement has been hitting out with recently. But to make a point of thanking the fans for buggering off, at best, they turned up and booed, voiced their displeasure. I think it's an absolutely bizarre thing to say after the game.
Melly, but... enough about Rangers, and I've got some more on Rangers.
Don't you dare say enough about Rangers in this podcast.
I know. If there's, from Celtic's point of view, it was a really poor approach to the game. I thought it was a very, very odd approach to the game. I think we were talking just before we put the microphones on, Melly, and you said the man marking thing against Celtic is starting to work. Far too much. I was watching that game and I was coming over all Ange Postecoglou. Stop fucking passing the ball backwards. There was so many square passes, so many back passes, so many players, like, they would get the ball, they'd look up, and all they were seeing in front of them were numbers on jerseys. Nobody was turning, looking for the ball. All the wee things that we seemed to work on that worked for us in so far this season, none of it was on display. In fact, all the stuff that we tried to erase from our game in order to improve as a team, all that stuff was on display.
Yeah, it felt a bit like a game from this time last season where it was defenders get the ball and everybody just runs away and hopes that they do it. For the first time this season, over the past week, whether it be the Zagreb game or this game, I've felt we missed Matt O'Reilly, because he was one guy who, when Celtic are playing out, you're looking for people that are willing to receive the ball on the turn and get going, and he was very good at that, whether it was a make himself available, bounce it back and then it goes out, but we just didn't seem to do that. It seems to be our defenders have the ball. Rangers put a player on Callum McGregor, which is usually, he can usually get away from that by pulling a player over, which opens up the space for somebody else to drop into. But Bernardo and Hatate just seem to be, we have to stay up here, we're not doing it. The only time Hatate done it, he bounced a couple back to Carter Vickers, but he was dropping that deep, it wasn't making a difference. And then into the second half, the one time that Kyogo got into the game, he bounced, came deep, got the ball, sprayed it out left to Kuhn, and Celtic actually got going. But that was well into the second half before that happened, and Celtic need to find a way to do this. And we always have a sort of laugh at that's a Brendan team, but what I've seen over the past 2 games is not a Brendan team. That's a team that is sitting on the ball far too long. In fact, they had to bring on Liam Scales to try and sort it out, speaks volumes, and we're just looking at it like there's no way
Do you think that was tactical? Do you think that was a tactical decision? Do you think it was an injury to Trusty?
It certainly was, yeah. I think
I thought it was
that,
an injury to the game, but it was said after it was a tactical thing. He wanted to get the ball moving quicker and get better passing in, and by bringing Scales on, Rangers passing did improve because they got a lot more of the ball. But that was a joke, by the way.
All right, okay. You did say it twice, and I was like,
I thought he was poor when he came on, but when Celtic have got the ball, the 2 centre halves, it has to go quicker. But that means there has to be players willing to take the ball on, and it didn't seem like that to me, whether it was Bernardo, whether it was Engels when he came on, whether it was Hatate, who somehow stayed on the pitch so long. These guys need to be making themselves available, and Celtic aren't doing that. We need to be finding guys that are willing to take the ball on, because it's all well and good having your centre-halves have it and then blaming Greg Taylor when he gives the ball away. But it was a shocking pass. But Celtic were close to doing it so many times throughout the match.
So much of that passing inwards, wasn't there? Just inexplicable.
Taylor's so bad for it.
Turning inwards and either passing backwards or passing blind passes straight across the middle of the pitch. So the first half seemed to me like almost... this seems really harsh, but the only way I can think of to describe it is almost like it was a failure of game plan, because I think that Rangers set up in order to basically man mark absolutely everything, right? Just close off absolutely everything, make sure all the space was closed. And then there's been compilations doing the rounds on X, of which there is multiple brilliant stuff on there, as we always say. But this was a particularly good one, just absolute hoofball, right, for Rangers. Now, is that going to win you a game? Is that an approach to beat Celtic? We'll never know now, because Celtic won the game, but it came mighty close. All they did was man mark, try and frustrate, try and make the midfield look a bit tired and out of options, and boot the ball up the pitch.
Kind of special.
Yeah, it was. It was actually very reminiscent of an Aberdeen, a McInnes' Aberdeen against Celtic, and that's what Philip Clement is getting paid the big bucks for, to bring the glory, to make Rangers great again. That's his approach to it, right? So,
really toe-calling stuff, isn't it?
Horrendous. So I mean, again, probably come back to stuff like this going on. But I thought the longer it went on, I thought, right, Celtic kind of need to change a few things up a wee bit here, and it's maybe a consequence of, one, Luke McCowan being unavailable for the game because of his cup tied, which feels like a kind of... I'm not just saying this because we could maybe have been doing with him. It feels like maybe a slightly outdated rule now, that you can't do that. You can play like 20, 21 league games for a team and then switch to another one and play the rest of the season, no bother, but you can't play one game for Dundee and then play anything for Celtic in the same competition. Anyway, but that's besides the point. He wasn't available anyway, not there to be able to mix things up. Arne Engels has, to one degree or another, fallen away a bit in the last month or so. I don't think that's debatable. I don't think that's in any way contentious, because he came in from his debut, which was coming off the bench against Rangers. He's basically played every game, and now he's not starting as many games as he once was, so he's kind of fallen away a little bit. The midfield options were right on the day, but once they were kind of man-marked to within an inch of their life, it didn't really seem like Celtic were going to get out of that to any effective way.
Well, that's
going into the second half. It changed up a bit. Hatate grew into the game, I think. Right, I don't think he had a good game overall, but he grew into it the longer it went on, and I think that sort of generally changed things. But other than that, it really was just quite similar to what we said against Bruges. Celtic were kind of largely stifled quite a lot in the first half. I thought some of that was their own doing. I think some of the passing was absolutely rotten, and it just seemed to be a little bit flat and lacking energy. Greg Taylor, I mean, that pass, right? I know I would have been prepared to come on here and say, look, he had an otherwise quite good game, but he had two absolutely shocking mistakes in it that you can't afford to give him that. I think it goes back to what we said about Cameron Carter-Vickers against Bruges. I mean, he had an absolute shocker of an own goal, but he does it so rarely. But I think Greg Taylor is in one of those bits where he's doing it over and over again. And to say that he had a good game apart from those two shocking mistakes would be a bit... But apart from that, how was the theatre, Mrs. Lincoln? I think so. I don't think we can ignore it. But all this to say is that I don't think the midfield dynamic really worked on the day to a certain point, and it's maybe something that has to be looked at. And what I said at the top of this was that Brendan Rodgers, I mean, managers love this kind of thing. They love a problem to try and solve. So we need to maybe work on a couple of things, because on that basis, Ibrox is going to be tough going. We need to kind of come up with a better solution than that.
I think the problem that Celtic had was just functionally the team wasn't working, and I was quite annoyed that Brendan Rodgers actually stuck with it for quite as long as he did, because it was pretty evident early on that whatever our game, I know you keep stick with it, and there were elements of play where we did play out of the press quite a lot, and we managed to get the ball up the park, but I just thought we were second to everything with a minute in the midfield, and it was one of those games I thought at half time I was surprised not to see Adam Ida come on and just go long, hold it up. He's a different type of player. I didn't think Kyogo was really involved at all. There was a few moments when Kyogo came deep, played a wee 1-2, spun in behind, and we had maybe a wee bit of luck from that, but I just thought overall the approach to the match is not working, and I think there's a lot of players at the moment excuse me as I'm dying from the cold here. I think there's a lot of players at the moment who are just not performing. Greg Taylor's one of them, but it was Greg Taylor that played the pass, and he is at fault for that, but that mistake was coming. I really think that mistake was coming. There was any number of players that could have played that ball, and that mistake was coming just by virtue of the fact that the way Celtic were playing. I thought Bernardo. I'm not going to. In fact, every day was rubbish. There you go. Just to save listing off players. I thought nobody apart from maybe Cameron Carter-Vickers and Kuhn in some fleeting moments got to show they were going to. Oh, Maeda as well. Got to do their stuff, and I think Brendan Rodgers is a bit of a puzzle to solve, a bit of a problem to solve, as you say, Stephen, because things are not really quite clicking just now, and players' form is starting to drop off, and the players that come in, when AJ went off and Ralston came on, we don't want to pillory anyone here, but that was just poor. The level, it's unthinkable that if AJ needs a time in the sidelines that we're back to Anthony Ralston. So I think the game did flag a couple of problems that Brendan Rodgers has got to try and solve in there, particularly with his midfield. If I was being charitable, I just think Engels is lacking a wee bit of confidence, Melly. I think, as people said, we've seen what he can bring, and we've spoken about him at length, but again, he came on and he was basically ineffective. I think there was 2 or 3 occasions he was caught waiting on the ball. Rangers player just came up and took the ball right off him. That can't happen in a Glasgow derby. That's a sort of bare minimum. And he wasn't the only one. Greg Taylor got the ball taken off him so bad he fell in his arse, and someone bust right through. Engels
that was the
second
second one I was talking about. That, in some ways, it was even worse than that pass across, because anything
it malfunctioned, didn't it?
Yeah, you can have. Yeah, you can have those moments where you just have a brain freeze, and before you even go to stop yourself, you've already played the pass, and you think, oh, what have I done? Right, that can happen. It shouldn't happen, right, but it can, and I've seen it so many times. But what Greg Taylor did for that second mistake, was that the one where they went 4-on-1 with Cameron Carter-Vickers?
Yeah.
So he looked like. You ever seen one of those videos of the goats that just get startled and fall over on their sides, like they sort of faint? He looked like one of those goats who'd been given a fright. But from that moment on, I mean, Cameron Carter-Vickers, that was the stuff of legend. See the pictures that were doing the rounds after Cameron Carter-Vickers did that, and we tweeted after the game. It was like, 4-on-1 might seem like a really good position, but remember that one is Cameron Carter-Vickers, and they didn't manage to pull it off. Absolutely brilliant. But the Greg Taylor mistake was absolutely shocking.
I think Rangers need to do a wee bit less moaning about that penalty, Melly, and more moaning about the fact that they couldn't convert a 4-on-1 and put it in the back of the net.
When you watching the highlights just before we came on here, when you see that one, it's so blatant that the guy's made the mistake, but when it pans to Philip Clement on the sideline, he turns away, head and hands screaming. He knows that was the chance, and that was the opportunity to go 2-0 up early in the second half. You have to take it. 4-on-1, it's criminal that you make the wrong decision there and end up allowing the defender to make a block in, but it was absolutely tremendous from Carter-Vickers, who was decent again, but some of his passing was poor. But you mentioned Engels there, and it's getting difficult with him because things aren't seeming to come off for him on the bare bones of it. But if you just watch the highlights package of him, I'm still impressed by his mentality, because to come on in that game was very, very difficult. To find yourself where it's not going right for you again, of your own doing, because you're waiting on the ball, you're not doing the basics, but to that cutback for Kuhn,
it was perfect. It was
absolutely brilliant. The way, the angle of it, the way he's fallen back, any other cross he makes probably gets cut out, and he finds that pass, and it was brilliant. And also the balls on that kid to step up for a penalty as well.
Yeah.
We've seen other players.
Others didn't.
Scared to step up. goal scorers, guys on big wages, and that guy stepped up and took the penalties. So hopefully that's a wee confidence boost for him, because coming into that game was difficult. He didn't play well. He comes away with assist, he bags a penalty, and crucially comes away with a medal and all.
I'm glad, Stephen. I'm glad Kuhn got his goal, because again, it must have just been the occasion, the difficulty of the match, the way that Rangers had approached the match. But there was a few times when Kuhn was through and he was doing that thing we saw a lot of earlier in the season, where he just takes one touch too many. I think there was maybe he kind of rounded. He didn't really round the keeper, but he took an extra touch when he was closing in on Butland, and he didn't get his shot away. And you think it's that one extra touch. But Kuhn's been absolutely brilliant for us this season. If anybody was going to score against them, it was definitely going to be him.
The highlights, having watched the highlights back a couple of times, a number of times now actually of the game, because it's just one of those games that it's just really interesting to watch back and how it played out.
Find something new you love every time, don't you?
It's like Airplane. It's like Airplane. It rewards
what was your
on
most
every
recent
watch.
favourite thing? Mine is Clement looking puzzled about Yilmaz coming up to take the penalty.
Oh.
Did you see that? Was it Yilmaz? He sort of looks and goes, huh? Yeah.
There's so much made of that, right? Before I come back to Kuhn, there's so much made of this, the Rangers penalty takers thing, and they're absolutely up in arms about who took the penalties. But I'm like,
I think quite rightly so.
But is it so unusual that Yilmaz would take a penalty? You're not going to have 5 obvious penalty takers in a squad. I mean, how
it's unusual for your goalkeeper to take one before your centre forward, though. That's quite peculiar.
Yes, that is. But once Butland strides up and rattles it in, why does that become a pressing issue the next day? I mean, obviously Dessers probably should have taken one, but this idea that Yilmaz is too young to be taking a penalty, he's 23 years old, he's an established
I don't think
footballer.
it was that. I think it's the fact that you've got strikers there on who are paid big money, because he is on big money to score goals, and he's not even felt he's got the bottle to step up within the first 5 penalty takers.
But you would have swapped him for Butland, though, and Butland scored his. Yilmaz, I just don't know why they're so up in arms about this after the fact. I mean, if Butland had missed, obviously that's criminal to have a goalkeeper taking one.
It's okay, Stephen, they're not anymore, because I've been doing my favourite thing after Celtic beat Rangers, and that's indulging in all sorts of Rangers fan media. There's only one person to blame just now. I listened to something called, I think it was called the Rangers Review, and there was a guy on there.
Pope John Paul in 1982, where he came to Glasgow and set this all in motion. Yeah,
that's when it started, Stephen. And what happened then was a chain of events. Chaos theory took place, and one thing after another, the dominoes fell and they tumbled down, and there was an independence referendum, and Hugh Dallas got sacked. And then there was a post office scandal, and then they tarmacked George Square in the middle of the night, and then they made tunnels underneath Glasgow City Chamber, and all of that led to John Beaton and the boys in the VAR room not giving a penalty for Liam Scales's pull on the jersey, and that's basically where all the focus is going to come for the next couple of days. And do you know what? It probably should have had a wee look at that in the VAR room.
I'm going to. I'll come back to what I was saying a wee second ago. But we're all over the place. It's an exciting time. It's one of those post-cup final podcasts that we're accustomed to, but we never get the feel for being able to keep it coherent. We're obviously going to branch out into different things. Personally, I think it was, if not an absolute stonewall penalty, then it should have at least been examined, because stills are often unhelpful in this, but I think in this example, if you can demonstrate that a foot landed on the line during the course of the foul being committed, then it at least warrants being looked at, because on the line is inside the box technically. So if you have a still of the jersey being pulled and a foot on the line, it should be looked at, in my opinion. I mean, it's brilliant, to be honest. I wish it was even further in the box and it was an even worse foul. I wish he'd completely scythed them down about a foot inside the box.
It was textbook skills. It was absolutely textbook skills.
A bad touch that took him into that position in the first place. A wee bit of a panic. But, I mean, who cares? I mean, let them moan about this.
Stephen,
this will be the new Julian.
We cannot. We always say it. See, if you're going to complain about the refs, join us when we are complaining about them every single week, telling you these refs are not good enough. We always say it, but no. Paranoid, it's a conspiracy, there we go. And you cannot tell us John Beaton is against Rangers. There's absolutely no way you can tell.
I know.
I was going to ask you guys, it was obviously a very different at the match. I thought John Beaton was breaking up the game so often. There was stupid wee fouls. What was it like watching it? Because I just felt it was like any incline of any 60-40 in Celtic's favour went against us, and it just seemed like throw-ins, wee fouls, Cameron Carter-Vickers getting booked.
There was a moment, sorry to jump in there, but before I completely forget about this, there was a moment in the first half where it seems like such a trivial thing and not something I want to bring up after a game. Certainly if Celtic had lost, I would never bring this up because it would look so unhinged, right? But there was a moment in the first half where Cameron Carter-Vickers played it really quite strongly off a Rangers player out for a throw-in.
Aye,
right
over on the left-hand side.
Yes, right in front of the linesman, and he gave a throw-in to Rangers. It was unbelievable, just inexplicable. You cannot explain that decision. It was right in front of him. It took a massive, I wouldn't even describe it as a deflection, a full-on cannon off the Rangers player's shins out for a throw-in, and he just put his flag up and waved for a Rangers throw-in. Just... Again, inexplicable decisions. That wasn't beaten, of course, but that was the linesman. But he was at it the whole game as well. Just again, decisions that cannot really be rationalised in any way, particularly that throw-in. It seems like such a small thing, but it adds up, and it's not about the throw-in itself, it's about the decision making that would lead you to do that in full view of tens of thousands of people in the stadium, and even more, hundreds of thousands, millions or whatever watching at home. See, what would possibly lead you to give that decision?
See, that's what we've been saying the whole time. That's why I've got no sympathy for these arguments from Four Lads Had a Dream, I think the podcast was called. And he said it like he was doing a national address. He goes, "I've got no choice but to say it. I question the integrity of the officials now." I'm like, oh wow, that'll do it. Or whatever.
Why did they use these words?
I know all of a sudden the Rangers fans have got an issue with officials, so we all need to sit up and take notice. Now, we've been saying this for years, and it's exactly the point you make, Stephen. It's you see something happen and you'll say, okay, what was the rationale for that? Because no one else can understand. But a key part of the way Rangers approach these games is long ball, trying to win the second ball, and the third tenet of the way they approach these games is try and win as many free kicks as you can, about 40 odd yards out from Celtic's box, and just shell balls in. So when you've got a referee that's happy to break up the game, they must be rubbing their hands at the thought of John Beaton taking over a Celtic Rangers game, because he's going to blow for everything and give them absolutely everything, and it works for them. Stephen, we sort of derailed there talking about refs. You wanted to talk about something else.
I started talking about the highlights and how much the highlights were quite fun, but what I meant to say is
I've got a fun thing from the highlights.
You asked me about Kuhn some minutes ago. Could have been an hour ago for all I know.
His performance and the fact that his whole season was leading up to scoring against them.
Yeah, I think it was inevitable, but what I meant about the highlights was that even watching it back in full knowledge of the outcome of the game, I know that Celtic won, I still get frustrated that time he was clean through. And it's not even like, that way where, so it gets in behind Proper brilliantly.
Pace.
I know that Proper is famously quite slow, right? But he's slow for a footballer, so he should still be able to, in some way, run in a semi-fast, right? But it just shows you that the difference, the levels of speed that can be from one player to the next. He had a head start on Kuhn, and the way that Kuhn got round them was so clean that it wasn't like he even went shoulder to shoulder or they ran into each other. It was even a barge. He just ran straight past them. But from that point on, he sort of jinked inside, and it's not even as if he convincingly dropped a shoulder to Butland. He basically dribbled straight into where Butland was about to dive. And I thought, it was so frustrating, and it was another example of that fundamental flaw with Nicholas Kuhn, where you don't care, see if he's scoring goals, and he has been sensational all season. It's not a factor. It is that fatal flaw that we thought about last season, where he just a split second too long very often with Nicholas Kuhn. Again, it's a small quibble because he scored a vital goal in the game as well, but I was so frustrated watching that because it was such a golden opportunity for him. But in fairness, again, he scored his goal set up brilliantly by Engels, as already covered, but it was that a moment I was like out of my seat, just head in hands that Kuhn had done that again. But again,
it's a strange
minor
one,
complaint.
Because most players are sometimes too keen to get the shot away. Whereas he's just trying to cover out that absolute perfect chance. You think, God, that, as you say, it's one of these things where you look at it and go, maybe that's why he's at Celtic. A player that we need to talk about, Martin Melly, though, was Maeda. See, when he scored his goal against Rangers, I thought, there's no way he's done it again. He can't have done that thing he does against them all the time. Just catch a defender sleeping and just run through and stick it in the back of the net. And for a split second, genuinely, I was watching it in the house with my dad and my nephews and that, and for a split second we were all cheering because we all looked at each other and were like, was that Tavernier again? I can't believe it was the Tavernier again. It turned out no, it was Leon Balogun, but I just thought, it cannot be Tavernier again, getting the ball taken off him by Dyson Maeda.
Tavernier had the cheek to be caught in the replay moaning at somebody for that. Like,
yeah, this is you. This is
you've
usually
made
you.
a name off this. But Maeda, it was the biggest disappointment for me when Rangers get the equaliser, for the second equaliser, was that Dyson Maeda one deserved to be a winning goal. That was absolutely brilliant. It's everything that Dyson Maeda is brilliant at encapsulated there. The pressing, the absolute, when you think, oh, his technique's not there, he puts it over the defender, takes a touch across, you're like, oh, is it too much? Absolutely perfect. Then, oh, has he got the finish? He does, absolutely rifles at home. But it was brilliant and it was great, and we were just in front of where he celebrated. But the thing when I was watching the highlights added to that was, for the first goal, the ball deflects off Raskin. For the second goal, Raskin gives the ball away, and for the last goal, he misses the pass. And when Bajrami scores, Raskin runs over right in front of us, cup in the ears. And I was like, see if you do not back that up, son, you are going to look very foolish. And so I was watching his whole game, and for him to have a nightmare for all three goals brought me some amount of joy, even to the fact I thought the first one hit off proper. So I had the magnifying glass out of the TV earlier, making sure it was Raskin, so I could come on in here and absolutely roast that guy, man.
I'm glad you mentioned some of the calamities that led to that goal, because there's something.
Callum McGregor had a part to play in it, no?
Yeah, well, I'll rewind to that bit in a wee second. There's something extra special about seeing Dyson score against Rangers, and that's a few now. That's like
modern day Hunscalper.
Bona fide. No, that's like a handful I can think of now. He's maybe catching up on not quite Kyogo, but
he must be his most frequently scored against team.
I mean, quite possibly. Aye, I know he scored a hat trick earlier this season, but he must have like 4 or 5 against Rangers by now. And for someone who isn't necessarily,
there was Sutton and Thompson.
It's not necessarily a centre forward. Neither is Thompson, of course, but he's just a constant thorn in their side. It must be horrible to play against him. But
absolutely,
well, that's my point. There's something extra special about seeing him doing that, because I think we're all just so happy for the guy. He's such a hero, and I want to be clear about that. I don't mean that in like a patronising way, but look at wee Dyson and on he goes. Right? It's not that. A lot of attention has been on Kuhn this season, and rightly so, because I think that part of his story, part of his arc now, is one of redemption, because he underwhelmed at first, and now he's burst onto the scene, and it is basically if he carries this on, an absolute stick-on for Player of the Year material. So he has rightly garnered a lot of attention and a lot of praise. He's become one of, if not Celtic's main danger man this season. But Dyson has, not necessarily quietly, but slightly under the radar, had almost just as good a season as Nicholas Kuhn has. Yeah, 11 goals, which is well on target for being the best season of his career. I know he was the top scorer in the J-League the year before he joined Celtic, so that was obviously good for him. But in terms of Celtic, it's by far his best season so far. And we're just so... There's something just so positive that radiates from Dyson Maeda, and he's like the coolest guy in Glasgow for a start. But it's like he's gone beyond. He's one of these characters that could potentially perfectly marry like being a cult hero with also delivering on the pitch, so that it's not just this kind of weird.
It's not Samaras.
So it's not like he was a bit pish, but we love him anyway. It could be both. It could be like one of these properly like well loved characters that delivers massively on the pitch, and long may it continue. But I just wanted to nod towards him, because I think that he's only 1 goal or so behind Kuhn so far this season, which is, I mean, that's your 2 wingers as well. That's not even your centre forwards. And he's maybe not in terms of his creative output quite alongside Kuhn, but he's up there in terms of like Player of the Year candidates if he continues like this. But just delighted for the guy, and all the pictures of him on the pitch with his family and all that. The camera kept going to them as well. Anytime there was like, when he was lining up to take his penalty, the focus was on them. Just wholesome content is how I would describe it. So yeah, just buzzing for the guy yet again. He's a great player.
just before we move on from Dies and Maid, I've sort of came up with this theory that he could be a game changer for Scottish football, because there has never been a player like him in my lifetime anyway. And MD, it's undeniable with him now. So in the big games, and if you're a fan of Scottish football or Celtic or Rangers, you're going to watch these games and you're going to see a guy continually score goals and do the right things. And look, he's not the best technical player in the world, but he puts in more effort than anybody else on the pitch. And that amount of running, that desire, that engine he shows all the time, that's something to aspire to for young guys and young players, young girls, whoever wants to be a footballer. Everybody can now point to it and say, you can make it with that much hard work. And I think for Scottish football, to have this guy in it where hard work is not something that I associate with a lot of Scottish footballers. It seems to be you get to a certain age and you decline. You can just point to players and go, be like Daizen Maeda and you will have a career, because there is always a place for that. So Daizen Maeda is going to be one of these guys that we are going to refer back to. Like, look at the work rate of that guy. He is going to be somebody that's always going to be talked about. We don't have a Maeda, somebody that can press the life out
We're
of
never
players.
getting another one again. We're never
No,
getting
he's a
another one
one-off.
again.
But that doesn't mean people can't try and be like him, and see if they do, it will make Scottish football as a whole better.
Great
the
again.
goal.
I thought you were going to say great again.
Yeah. So I meant to go back to the goal, because you mentioned Callum McGregor and I said that, right, I'll put a pin in that, I'll come back to it. So see the goal, the structure of the goal itself, the ball just sort of drops into midfield and Callum
How
McGregor...
did it start, Stephen?
Was it a long ball by any
Jack
chance? Or was
Butland
it Jack
launched
Butland?
it
Yeah,
up,
so
yeah.
he launches it. But the ball just sort of drops in midfield. Callum McGregor runs straight under it. He completely misjudges the flight of the ball. He runs under it. And he turns round expecting to be challenged in some way. Oh shit, I've made a mess of that. They're maybe going to be on the breakaway. You can't mistime these things for a single second. He turns round and there's no one there. He gets a second bite at it. He just brings the ball down, or sort of hooks it forward. Raskin heads it straight into the path, sort of between Balogun and Maeda runs through. So I wanted to reverse a couple of frames and talk about just how ridiculous it was a goal for Rangers to concede. Just like Keystone Cops stuff in there. But just calamitous stuff in the midfield. There's no excuse for that either. Look, see, there's no excuse for a ball to be bouncing twice in midfield with none of your players, all these top class midfielders, the Great White Hopes that they've often got in midfield. There's no excuse for them to not challenge for the ball in midfield with two bounces from a long ball. Ridiculous stuff.
Have we got a midfield problem? McGregor looks to me like he's carrying an injury. He doesn't look the most mobile. He doesn't look the most... definitely wasn't on it at all yesterday. Bernardo, just in that game in isolation, when you look at them, there's no one really standing out just now in the last couple of games. Melly, you're shaking your head.
No, I agree with you. I don't think MD's standing out, but I do sign up to the fact that if you put a guy on Callum McGregor, it makes it a lot harder. Celtic's play goes through him, and it's only taken how many years for Rangers to realise, here, see if you stop him playing, you've got a chance. Because remember the game, Brendan Rodgers' first game back at Ibrox, when Michael Beale decided to let him have the keys to Ibrox and just run about everywhere. He's dominated these games so often that he's a guy that Rangers have to stop now. And Dynamo Zagreb done a good job of it. But again, I go back to it. If somebody's on Callum McGregor, that means it should be easier for Trusty, Taylor, Johnston, Carter Vickers all to get out, because he can just drag somebody away in all the space. And you say you get annoyed, Jamie, by him pointing, but that's him dragging somebody away and pointing where the ball should go, and Celtic should have a plan for that. But it would go into Johnston, it would go into Taylor, and instead of them feeding the balls into the midfield or out wide, they chose not to. They chose to go inside, and Rangers can just sit in that mid-block, because there's no point pressing Celtic high, because that's not where you're wanting them to make mistakes. Leave their centre-halves on it, and then leave them, and then they'll need to do something. How many times did you see Cameron Carter-Vickers gesticulating like, come on, I've got the ball here for ages, but I can't keep it forever, and we had to go back a lot of the time, which means Rangers are in shape the whole time. So it's about getting the ball, moving it quicker, and having that braveness. And even, very disappointed with Alistair Johnston in the game. You say Tony Ralston didn't come on and do much, but Johnston passed the ball out the pitch about 3 times in the first half hour. He was really, really poor. He's been great this season. He was maybe struggling with an injury, but these are simple passes that Celtic weren't doing. It's not just one player. There's far too many of them in the last 2 games that have been doing that, not having that bravery. And I'm not going to single out individual players. I'm looking at the whole team, because it doesn't just go from Celtic's defence and then Kyogo's got nothing to do with it, or Kuhn and Maeda don't have anything to do with it. People need to be making runs. People need to be making things happen. And as I said, it's the first time I've thought we could do with Matt O'Reilly.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, Stephen, that the team haven't really been performing the last couple of weeks. I think Brendan's going to have to.
Mad, we're still unbeaten since Borussia Dortmund.
No, that's 2 games in the calendar year or something like that. I think it's something ridiculous.
Should we have won in the last couple of weeks? Brendan Rodgers himself has spoken about like 45 minutes wasted, that you can't afford to do that at this level, and that's kind of how I felt when I watched that first half against Rangers. Like, okay, there's another one of those, Brendan. That's 45 minutes we've wasted, and I did feel that against Rangers. I think looking forward to Ibrox, if that's the way that Rangers are sort of going to be playing, and we are going to have to approach the game the same way, I think it's going to be a lot tougher than I thought originally, or thought before that game.
Just before you move on there, I think Rodgers as well, when Celtic got to 2-1, we were flying, and then all of a sudden it was just I don't know if they thought, right, we just need to control the ball, but the whole problem in the whole game was we kept the ball in defence too long.
Yes.
And as soon as we got into that 2-1 lead, Liam Scales starts thinking, I need to keep control of the ball. No, you don't, Liam. You're the last guy that needs to keep control of the ball. We were dangerous because we were getting the ball out wide to our wide players and getting Rangers on the turn. I felt as soon as we got that 2-1 up, that was time for Ida to come on.
Yeah.
Get him on straight away, and then that gives you that other out ball where you can get Rangers on the turn. If we need to play it down the channels, we can, because they were going to need to come on to us. I was wanting that substitution made a bit earlier in the game just to get him on. And I think when it comes to Hampden and it comes to Ibrox, these type of games, Adam, he does your man for that. I'm not saying he's a better player than Kyogo, but I think he's a better guy to have in the pitch because he has more to his game.
I would find it very difficult to disagree with that. As I said earlier on in the podcast, I think that bringing it on, even at half time, I definitely think there was a shout for it. I think we needed to change up the way we were doing things. Stephen, there's been a lot of counting over the past couple of weeks, over the past couple of years, over the past couple of decades, and it was just nice to win that 119th trophy, wasn't it? Just win it, and that's all. That's all you need. Really.
Why do I know how many trophies my club's won? Why do I know this nonsense?
They started it.
Yes,
they started it, and this whole it's just glad that ridiculous moniker of theirs is now just put to bed. It's gone. It was ridiculous. And they tried to continue it for many, many a year, even when people would say, what about this club in Egypt, or what about this club in this country, or what about this club in Ireland, and none of those kind of, for whatever reason, seem to count. Just for whatever reason, those guys don't count, but it's a lot more difficult to make that argument when you've got a team in Scotland that have done it. But I'm quite happy with the most successful Scottish football team in history title. That works for me. How does that fit for you, Stephen?
That's absolutely fine. That's a nice little bauble to go on the many accolades that Celtic have achieved over the over a century now of being a football club. It really is. It's the way you put it there, talking about how LA don't count, Linfield, they sort of count, but they're kind of our wee cousins, so they can sort of take about that. Right? It's so tedious and small time, it's unbelievable, but it's good fun to just finally take it off them, right? And the sad thing is it doesn't now go away. It now becomes a very real possibility. Every trophy going forward will now be about this being in the balance until Celtic.
Not when we win the treble this year.
If Celtic are able to pull away from them, this is the best way to just shut it up. But it's completely ridiculous, and I've been enjoying the discourse about it as much as the next person, right? So there's been a lot of stuff like raked up from the forums, and thankfully in our Discord we've got several. After a game like this, we've got several channels dedicated to stuff like this, right? So all gets.
How do you get on the Discord, Stephen? You brought it up a couple of times, but I'm
fantastic
just trying to
question.
figure out how to get involved.
fantastic question. You go to patreon.com/20minute-tims and all the information's there. So that if you sign up to our top tier, the all-in tier, as it's called, you're automatically sent an invite to the Discord, and there you can take part in the finest, in my opinion, Celtic community online. Full of good people talking just great chat all day, quite literally all day and night, because we've got people all over the world in there talking stuff about Celtic life, food, films, music, everything in there. So it's great. But we've got some channels dedicated to the good stuff just now, right? And a lot of raking up of stuff that's on other forums, right? And it's so pitiful what's going on. We've been joking for a long time about the, go and get the war titles and all that. I mean, if they're going to count this, we should count this.
The lower leagues are that.
Aye, genuinely, none of it matters. It doesn't matter. Like, history's great, but I think when you become consumed by it and you pretend that it's more important than the present, that's when you've lost. You've absolutely lost. Yeah. Because a lot of the argument about it, right? I saw a great post breaking it all down, and it was like, you have to remember the only reason Celtic have been able to do this is because they've won 20 odd of the last such and such trophies. I'm like, yep, have. And they've won this. Yeah, they've won like 17% of their entire trophy total since Brendan Rodgers took over the first time. I'm like, yep, that's true as well. Brilliant, isn't it? Brilliant having a really healthy present as opposed to a forgotten past from 100 years ago. Yeah. The minute you are raking up things from like 1912, can we count that? What about that thing from 1897? Can we count that? The minute you start doing that, you're desperate for your history. Stuff that happened 75, 80, 100 years before you were born. The minute you start playing that off as more important than what's happening today, you've lost. And that is more of a desperate loser mentality than anything James Tavernier has ever said or done. Coming out with stuff like pretending to care about trophies that were won 100 years ago is lamentable stuff from football fans. Again, I'm not saying it's nothing. I hope that Celtic were brilliant to support in the 1910s, but it means very little to me now that because of what we're experiencing in the present when I'm actually here to experience it. The minute I catch myself flicking back through dusty old books to find out if we won like a Fairs Cup or a Glasgow Cup in like 1904 or something like that. Something.
The Driver Cup.
Genuinely pathetic stuff, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that Celtic have got this now, but it's the only reason that I care about it at all is because it absolutely enrages them and it takes just the last thing away from them that they hold dear. It's the only thing. And even we've joked in the past as well about even putting the achievements of either of us right on par with like Real Madrid and all that, who've won like 15, 16 European Cups and Champions Leagues, to give equal weight to League Cups that were won in the 40s and all that to what Real Madrid have done is preposterous in the first place. It doesn't matter if, like as I say, history's great, but it's better to have a good present and a future. Of the three things, if we're going to break it down to three things, past, present, history, right? It's better to have two, or the two of the same thing there. Past, present, future, right? If we're going to have three of those things, it's better to have two of them in good shape than the other, and it's a history, and that's all Rangers have got now. And even that, Celtic have taken it away from them now. So I'm delighted about it, but not for the reasons that people might think. I'm not going to start painting it over my walls or anything like that. It's a ludicrous thing to focus on, but it's just enjoyable because Celtic have snatched that away. Brilliant.
And the best of it all is, Melly, is that these guys that are creating history for Celtic are playing today. We're watching James Forrest. We're watching Callum McGregor. We're watching Celtic's most decorated players of all time. Cup trophies while we're getting to sit in the stand and watch them. Rangers' most decorated players, you can't even find a digital photograph. Half of these guys are oil paintings haunted in some mansion somewhere. Like this weird
cave paintings.
They're cave paintings. These guys. So we're getting to watch the guys like James Forrest, and it's just it sounds so like, James Forrest has picked up his 25th trophy of his life. But you think to yourself, this is a guy who very well could not have He was so far out of the picture up until about 18 months ago when he found a new lease of life and he started to contribute to the squad again and he worked himself into it. Callum McGregor has been... Callum McGregor, as far as a midfielder goes, is way, way beyond even the likes of what the Barry Ferguson and all these guys they've had.
Yeah,
Like, Callum McGregor is just an unbelievable footballer and has been arguably the best player in this country, or one of the top players in this country, almost his entire career since he made his debut. So we're watching these guys perform at the top level and pick up trophies, and they just picked up another one there in 2024, and they're like, yep, Callum McGregor, and James Forrest joins the ranks of the most decorated Celtic players ever. He's just like, oh, brilliant. Thank God for these guys, and thank God we get to watch them.
Yeah, it's a pleasure watching it right now, and the utter success that we've seen is incredible. Callum McGregor again, it's like Celtic weren't great yesterday, but ultimately they got the job done. And while we have our gripes with Celtic, how they didn't play well during the week, when it comes to games like this, when it comes to these type of games against this club, this team rarely, if ever, let us down. We are always there winning the cup. And I've got a vivid memory of being a wee guy, and like you're talking about, like Rangers would always beat us. I went over to the boy across the road from me after the game, and he was a Rangers fan. We were playing football and just talking about the game, and Celtic were good. We ended up getting beat that day as always, and I've got a vivid memory of just thinking, I wonder if I'll ever see a good Celtic team that go out and win. And that memory stuck with me, and when Martin O'Neill came in, it was unbelievable to me, because I'd seen Celtic win like 3 trophies in my lifetime. Now they win 3 trophies in a season, most seasons, and it's brilliant. The apathy I felt then, that is what they are feeling now. They'll feel like, what can we do to win things? I will get the odd one where Todd Cantwell has a decent game and we win when they've already won the league. But apart from that, they've got nothing. They think this 55 thing was a thing. They think it would have broken us, and they think it would have been something that, we'll dine out of this in years. Aye, it's now 4 seasons later and we've got all the trophies again, and every time we come up against you, we beat you no matter what they throw at us. It's all this. 55 was the thing, and then they're clinging on to this 118 titles in Scotland, the world's most successful club. They're doing their heavy lifting with this history, with their words and all this stupid Churchillian speak they do, and all this nonsense. That's how their heavy lifting comes in. Celtic's heavy lifting is done like it was done on Sunday, on the podium, when the trophy's there to be lifted. That's when we do it, and I hope they watch, and I hope they're absolutely scunnered by it again.
And I love that post. Sorry, I love that post. Speaking of the kind of chat they give out, but I love that post that someone said, Celtic fans the night before a derby, right, moan Celtic into them. Rangers fans the night before. Brothers, awake for today we march into our hearts are steadfast and our will is unbroken. That's shite.
They've tried everything. Do you know, they've tried absolutely everything, and it always just comes down to, we're not angry enough. We need to be more. We need to be more angry. And all I'm going to say is, back when I was watching Celtic, my first Celtic game that I can remember at least was a Coca-Cola Cup final, and losing that to Wraith Rovers, and Paul McStay missing that penalty, right? But we all loved
another
Paul
penalty
McStay.
shootout,
Yeah. We all loved Paul McStay. We loved Peter Grant, Tom Boyd, John Collins. There's a list as long as your arm of players who played for the jersey when we were crap, and we loved them all. And they when they show up at Celtic events today, there's rooms packed full of people that want to meet them and shake their hand and thank them and all this sorts of stuff. And contrast that with Rangers, they hate James Tavernier. They hate every player that plays for them, and they think that the reason these guys are not winning is because we don't hate them enough. We're not angry enough. And it's the same as when they went out of business all those years ago. You sink us, we'll sink you, show liquidation. They're just doing it all over again. History's repeating itself, and while they're trying this, we're trying a thing called supporting your team and winning trophies. I tell you what, I wouldn't swap it for absolutely anything.
No, not a chance.
If you want to support... Stephen, I'm just about to plug the Patreon there. So
I thought you were wrapping up. But
no.
by all means, proceed.
If you want to support us with extra videos, extra podcasts, extra writing, get podcasts for every single Celtic match, writing and videos, patreon.com/20minute-tims is where you can do that. There are 3 tiers. Check them out. The free trial's on just now. You can go, you can sample it, you can listen to some old stuff, get a wee selection, find out if it's for you, and join us there. Stephen, I'll let you wrap us up.
Well, I was just going to say a final thing on the subject of trophies and success, and despite all the stuff we're talking about, how tedious this ridiculous accolade has been over the last couple of years as Celtic
You've
have
got
been
it tattooed on your back now.
He's got 119
stars. Passed out 3 times, but it's well worth it. I just on the subject of that, whenever Celtic have this, yet another trophy. But whenever Celtic do this, they have some element of success during the season. Obviously, last season didn't start out particularly well, and I think that's really irked Brendan Rodgers. I think he kind of described that as one they needed to get back, was the League Cup final going into this season. He's always been one for his setting goals and hitting targets, and the treble is almost certainly what one of the goals is going into a season for Celtic. But on the subject of trophies themselves, we do try and make a point of just sticking a kind of pin in it, I think, bookmarking it in some way by saying, enjoy these. They're not, as much as we're talking about racking up trophy after trophy. This is not normal. This is not how football works. Even, I mean, I think in some ways, positive and negative, what happens in Glasgow has skewed the perception of football worldwide, for people who live here, and they think that this is normal. In some ways, it probably colours the perception of players who leave. Why would you ever leave and not win trophies? And I'm like, because this is 99.9% of football in the world is never doing this. They never win anything, and it's just about sort of challenging your career in some other way, trying to excite your fans in some other way, knowing that you'll likely never win anything. Some of the best players in the world go through their entire careers winning 2-3 trophies or something at best. So it is, I think it's important to just pause every so often and think how lucky we are to be able to enjoy stuff like this. And you look at guys like James Forrest, was that 25 medals at Celtic, which is obscene. I mean, that again, the point I'm trying to make is this doesn't happen.
Sorry to interject there, but James Tavernier's probably got 25 medals as well. You need to say winners' medals. If the price of silver goes up, he is quids in. Tav coin will be coining in.
Very true. In fact, he'll make a big show of it in front of the Rangers fans. I don't even want this. This means nothing to me. But meanwhile, just sort of pocketing it for later. You never know. Honestly, it's a short career and all that.
They're starting to make me feel bad for the guy. It's a thankless task. Look, I'm going to end on this, right? We need to wrap up as my health starts to fade anyway. Yeah. It's a thankless task. Playing for Rangers.
You've been very brave. I think we can all agree. Everyone, get in touch, put in the comments how brave Jamie has been to get to the mics in this condition. Look at him. Look at his little face.
Sign up for Patreon. It'll make me feel better. And on that bombshell,
help pay for Jamie's funeral.
If I die, start a GoFundMe. Right? And see you next week.